Some crazy stuff going on in this one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can understand why they're upset.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this is one of my favorite chapters. Well, probably the favorite chapter in this Torah portion because, the zealousness that both Levi and Simeon, but primarily Levi, have for seeing justice taking place. It's just, I have a sister and I have a mother, so I can definitely relate to, how I would react in this situation. But also, we see that Shechem, he sort of sounds like a spoiled brat in the beginning of this chapter. Like he's wanting to his dad, I want this girl, right? And his dad has to sort of clean up the mess that his son has made by going to them. And we see that he really didn't have anything to bargain with. He said, if you give us your daughter, you can buy land here, which they already did in the previous chapter. So he's sort of like, I think the king already knows that they messed up, but he's just trying whatever it takes. And I mean,
did you guys catch that after they attacked Shechem, the city of Shechem, they pulled Dinah out of Shechem's house?
No.
So that means that they had her the whole time.
Yeah.
So guys, this is like at the beginning of the chapter, for those of you watching the audience, at the beginning of the chapter says Dinah went out to see the girls of the region, right? To see the other girls, to go find some playmates, right? She went out to the land. She went to the field to go find some other people to play with. And Jubilee says she's 12 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So that seems normal, right? A girl about 6th, 7th grade goes out to find some other girls to go play soccer with or something, right? To go hang out with. She's bored. She's got a whole bunch of older brothers, right? And she's probably like, man, I'm tired of all these dudes.
Yeah.
I need to go find some girls to hang out with. And she gets kidnapped, guys, and raped. This isn't a courting process. Yeah. This wasn't her meeting some boy in the forest and getting all tingly and then taking things too far, and then her going back to Jacob, and then Hamar and Shechem show up and ask for her hand in marriage. No, she's abducted. She's kidnapped, taken to their house, and taken by force, as it tells you there. She's raped. It's not just the defiling of her being in a position of union with a Canaanite. It's not just that. Yes, I know the text talks about her being defiled by one of the members of the land, and that was not supposed to be done. But that's not the extent of it. Like, there's 3 different things here that are a transgression of Torah in that Jacob was going to let go, which I do not understand that whatsoever. Yeah. I know a lot of, and this is where I love the testament of Levi, because it tells you an angel actually shows up to Levi and tells him to do this, because he says that the judgment of the Shechemites is ready. Like, it's their day is now, their judgment day is now. You go and do this, So it's so from Torah alone, kidnappers die.
Yeah.
So for the people that come to this and say, well, why did they kill everybody in the city? Well, you just saw that the whole city encouraged this. The whole city thought this was okay. All the men of the city whom Shechem and Hamar went to and said, yeah, we got this girl here. Her father, they're traveling in the land. They just settled here, but we got our girl and we want to marry her. They said the only condition is that we got to get circumcised so that we can combine all of our possessions. They have this like communal mindset, right? Their livestock will be our livestock, right? Like it reminds me of that old communist joke, where they're like the moment that somebody says, that you have something, you're like, don't you mean ours? It's ours, right? It's like, it's just they have this strange mindset, which I've tried to tell people, like communism, the idea of it, the implication of it economically, it is ancient Babylon. And that's the same mindset of what we see here, because the idea is that through the idolatry and through the temples of the false gods, they controlled commerce and they controlled provisions, and they did it from a kingly top-down authority, and then had a bunch of slave servants underneath them. That was the ultimate goal of these cultures, and how they. Whereas Israel was different. You have the Torah giving you freedoms, giving you room to move around, giving you land that you can. So this is kind of interesting here that these guys have this mentality, and they think it's okay to kidnap a 12-year-old girl and rape her. And all the men of the city are like, yeah, that's fine. We'll get into covenant. What you've done is okay, so we're going to overlook that, and we'll go along with your proposition to go into covenant with this family. So all the men are complicit. All the people of this place are complicit in this absolute egregious atrocity of kidnapping and raping a 12-year-old girl. Just in case, the atheist finds this show and they're like, oh, look, they're talking about what happened at Shechem and how unjust God is to allow the Israelites to do that to the Shechemites. And you're like, guys, these dudes were kidnappers and rapers of little children, pedophiles. They're pedophiles.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're gonna be dead.
Yeah.
And I just give Levi and Simeon the how do I say this? I give them credit for being patient to wait even that long.
Yeah.
The moment Hamar and Shechem showed up to my house, they wouldn't have left with their heads attached.
Yeah.
Like that would have been the last time anyone from Shechem saw them. Like that. I'm sorry, but
I agree.
that's just the way I feel. You take my daughter, but I know they're probably formulating in their head, okay, well, if we kill them now, then we have to go get our daughter back, our sister back, So like they're trying to strategize, how can we get our sister back? And so they had this plan to make them all get circumcised and get them in a weakened condition so they can attack them at that point. So I'm rambling on, guys. This story is a big one. It's fun. What do you guys think?
Kind of surprised they didn't kill everybody in the city. They left the women and children, where many other stories they kill everybody. Sometimes keep the livestock, but
what do you guys think they did with the women and children?
I think they were grafted in, and I think sort of a spoiler. That's what we see in the next chapter when Jacob tells them to put away their foreign gods. I think there were some of the Shechemites that like everyone else when you come into Torah, you're not expected to do all of it in the beginning. There is discipleship, and it takes time to move away from your bad behavior into good behavior. That's Torah. The women and children were and the livestock were innocent, but it was the men that were consenting. So they had guilt upon them because they did not do what was right. So Levi and Simeon rightly executed judgment. And it sort of gets my blood boiling because it's, justice being, executed like this is, this is something that will never happen when the kingdom is here. Right. And it will be swiftly snuffed out if anyone even thinks of doing something wicked like this. We see, like you said, even in Testament and Levi, we get more information, but also in the Jubilees, I think it's 30 verse 4, where it says that it's written on the heavenly tablets that the Shechemites should be wiped out. So we have two witnesses there, and I think it's a big shame that people don't have access to Jubilees or haven't done their research on it, because if you just read Genesis and you look at Jacob's reaction to this, then you might come away with Levi and Simeon actually doing something wrong. And some people have even put in the isodetical opinion that they sinned by doing this. And then they have to spin it into Shechem actually didn't rape Dinah, but he just took her. In the same way that in the Torah, you can sometimes see it being formulated that if a man takes a woman and lays with her, then he has to take her as a wife. So people sort of have moved completely away from what actually happened, which was rape, into a different narrative because they don't have this extra information.
That's right. Yeah, for anyone that's questioning that, I actually put them on the slides here and as one of the footnotes on the bottom. And all these slides are available, guys, for free at our Patreon video. So here at the footnote here at the bottom, I put that and from verse 13, when the sons of Jacob were saying, because Shechem defiled their sister Dinah, and I put all the ways that she was defiled at the bottom from the Torah. Deuteronomy 7:2-4, Deuteronomy 22:28-29, and Deuteronomy 24:7. So if you guys want to go and cross-reference that, and you'll get an idea more of what Hannibal was getting at from the scriptures, that they were doing righteous judgment at this point. There was a grievous transgression that had happened. This girl was kidnapped and raped at 12 years old. So it's just, man, I can't imagine that. I've got a little sister that's 4 years younger than I am, so I can't even imagine, bro. I would, whole city would be burned down too.
Same.
So just for those of you following along at the house, so just go through the summary real quick. Jacob's daughter Dinah was kidnapped and raped by Shechem, the prince of the region. Shechem's and his father Hamor visited Jacob to ask for Dinah and Shechem to intermarry, offering Jacob freedom to live among them and buy property. Again, this is, look, no one's perfect, right? Even though Jacob has a heart for Torah, he's afraid in this account, and it tells you he's afraid. He tells you at the end of the chapter, he's afraid of the men of the region, that they're going to retaliate for this. So Jacob's going along with something he shouldn't. It says Jacob's sons discovered what had happened and were grieved and furious. They agreed to the marriage under the condition that all of the men in Shechem get circumcised. Hamor and Shechem convinced the men in the city of Shechem to get all circumcised. And 3 days later, Levi and Simeon attacked the men of Shechem, killing them all. They rescued Dinah and looted the city of livestock and possessions. So this is just a huge, huge chapter here that I think it's fascinating that, tell me what you guys think, that Jacob knows these people are connected with other towns in the region, right? These are the Hivites, one of the clans listed off in, I think, Genesis 15. One of the clans that'll be removed from the land. Eventually, we see also in Exodus 23, Yahweh talks about removing these 10 clans from the land. I believe the Hivites is included in one of those 10. So, but the Amorites are around them. You know, all these other people around them as well. That also would be opposed to the family of Israel. And I just think it's interesting that Jacob's like, have you seen what these people in the land will become a stench in their eyes? Will become a stench in their nostrils. Like they're all going to unite and attack us. And it seems like the sons of Jacob are just like, nah, we got it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Let them come. You know, it's just like these dudes are off the charts as far as the type of courage they display. And do you guys think it has anything to do with the ridiculous amount of angelic activity that they're seeing their father encounter throughout his life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they were so strengthened in faith that if they did righteousness, that they would either have angelic help or Yah would be with them definitely in one way or another. And we see that Levi being rewarded for his zeal here. We see the same thing with Phinehas being rewarded for his zeal with an eternal covenant of priesthood. So we see that Yah really does like when we have a zeal for righteousness. So yeah, these 12 patriarchs are something else, especially Levi stands out.
Yeah, it's truly wild. Now we have someone in the comment is they're saying with surprise, these two men took out, they alone took on the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Technically, Simeon and Levi were the first to attack and take out the men who had been injured from being circumcised. But it says the sons of Jacob went in and kind of cleaned up, helped them. So it does imply and say that the other sons were involved to some degree as well. It's just, I think the initial attack was started by Simeon and Levi, and they took down all the fighting men. And because at this point, I don't even think Benjamin's born yet. I think it's just Joseph's a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've got at least 10 of them, and that's enough. That's definitely enough.
Definitely.
So I wonder if there was some kind of like strategy that two men fighting together side by side used, to where they're like, in order to help defend each other while they fought, like to be like an unstoppable force, what I mean? Or if it was just one of those supernatural things where the father was just like, nobody's going to touch these guys. They're just going to go through and take everybody out, and I don't know. I wonder about that. In fact, I've told people before in the past, I've written a trilogy about the 100 years leading up to the flood of Noah. And I haven't published it. Excuse me. I haven't published it because I had a lot of the biblical cosmology wrong when I first wrote it. So I'm having to go back and redo some things. And in the last 5 years, I've learned quite a bit more about the priesthood. So I'm wanting to put more little tidbits in there to make it more realistic to Noah's interaction with Methuselah and with the Nephilim of the land and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I did is some of the battle scenes that I'm writing is I had the Nephilim tie themselves together with these big ropes. And so they would use tree trunks. The ropes would be layered through these tree trunks to tie themselves together as an anchor point on the battlefield. So they could easily pick up the tree trunk when they wanted to with the ropes and use it as a weapon, or they could just use it as a point of reference to keep their bearing to their partner that they're tied to on the battlefield that they're fighting alongside. And so while it seems cumbersome, they would practice this technique to actually use it during the battle to be almost unstoppable. And the rope was filled with razors. So anyway, the point is, I always wonder, like, what were these ancient battle techniques? Because we see, like in movies about the Spartans, how they were so uniformed with their shields and how they would protect their neighbors and themselves with their shields. And then they would use the phalanx, the big spear, for longer attacks, but it was very difficult to overcome, and the Romans perfected this over time, and that's why they were such a difficult force to overcome with the way they fought side by side with each other, specifically with these shields and swords and phalanxes. But I don't know if that was even required in a moment like this, where Simeon and Levi by themselves go after all the men first, whether they had some special strategy or if they just went in with just brute rage and just went in and took them out, just righteous indignation. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I wonder how, in caps, like how much are you hurting on the third day after circumcision? I'm curious. If they were completely unable to fight, or if Simeon and Levi just went door from door, just knocking on the door and just raided them, gave them no chance. I don't know how that played out.
That would be like a really funny parody, actually, to do a Levi and Simeon attack Shechem parody, where you just hear a knock at the door and this dude opens up and he's like, "Hi, we'd like have anyone told you about our Lord Jesus?" And then they just they act like Mormon missionaries or Jehovah's Witnesses, and they just end up killing them. It'd be a pretty dark parody. So anything else in this chapter, guys, you want to mention, or we'll move on to 35?
Yeah, I mean, regarding warfare back then, I would imagine all your men, all your boys, that's all they would do in their free time is practice. You know?
Yeah, they don't have TV, they don't have Xbox, they don't have, all the distractions that a lot of modern world nations have. And if they've already gotten down the basics of, providing their own food and a sense of stability for themselves through livestock, then they're not just constantly in survival mode, right? So they're settled in. Well, then what do you do all day? You train for war. So I think this is why one of the promises of the blessed kingdom to come is that in Isaiah 11 it says men will no longer train for war. The nations will no longer do that. So they're just going to be learning righteous behavior instead. So they'll be coming to the house of God to learn Torah. It's a beautiful promise.
Hallelujah.